We're gonna draw a little bit of everybody's blood. We're gonna find out who's the thing.
Hello and welcome to A24 on the Rocks. I will be your host this evening, Cole William Whitlaw Gibson, on a very special, spooky episode featuring a film that is very near and dear to my heart. Before we get into that, let's introduce our co-host. First, we have Eric.
I'm Wilford Brimley. If you have type 2 diabetes, like I have, then you drink White Claw Tropical Pomelo Smash. It only has 1 gram of total sugars.
You said
Just kidding, I'm
Tropical Pomelo
I-
Splash?
I don't have diabetes, and
That's
I'm
a
still
name.
drinking White Claw, though.
Good evening, world. My name is Kevin K. Konachek, and tonight I am drinking a Pucker Patch Slushie. That's right. It's a slushy ale, and it's got a whole bunch of cherry, raspberry, pineapple, lemon, and lime. You may ask who makes this. Well, it's my current employer, Lion's Tail Brewing. That's right. Come to Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, and drink my beer. That's all I got.
A24 Vibe Discussion.
Tonight we are reviewing one of my favorite, if not my favorite movie of all time, The Thing, from John Carpenter, from 1982. This film is actually a remake, which most people do not know. It's actually a remake from a 1951 film, The Thing from Another World, which is also based off of a book from 1930 or something like that. And this film is about a group of Americans in Antarctica at a research facility when a alien basically infiltrates and causes pandemonium throughout the compound in a thrilling film about isolation and not being able to trust anyone around you. So, first question to both of you: what is your background with this film and/or John Carpenter as a director? Let's start with you, Kevin.
All right, so I knew nothing about this film until I started this podcast with you X amount of months ago, years ago, however the fuck long it's been. In one of our first episodes ever together, I think you referenced this movie as being, like, your favorite, right? And it took all the way until about this summer when I was laying at home sick and I was just thinking about things that I wanted to do to pass the time, and I thought, well, hell, I have access to The Thing, let's watch it. So that was the first time that I had watched the film and immediately fell in love with it. I thought it was the absolute bee's knees and was just like, oh, I understand why Cole loves this film. And then I rewatched it again for this podcast and was equally reminded why it really is a classic and is something brilliant. As far as my exposure to Mr. Carpenter, nothing. Zilch. Nada. Knew his name, knew he was a fixture in cinema history, in horror genre history, but that's about it.
What about yourself?
I've watched Halloween before, obviously, and this is the second time I've watched The Thing. I know, like, John Carpenter as one of the great horror directors of all time, and I've looked over his, like, filmography. It's really this and Halloween, The Thing and Halloween, that are the big, like, names on it. I know Village of the Damned has some cult appeal, and then Big Trouble in Little China, I know was, like, a big film, but that's not exactly horror, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah, like, I never saw that one.
And I've never seen Halloween,
Yeah,
so, like, there's a reason
yeah,
that I
John-
just don't know John Carpenter, because I just...
John Carpenter's a big director because Halloween, like, I think the theme of Halloween, and again, we were talking about this on the Black Coat's Daughter, the use of negative space in Halloween specifically, like, led way to a lot of horror films, like, using negative space in cinematography to make people anxious about, I don't know, somebody killing them at any moment. You know, like, you have the character's face in 1/3 of the screen, and then you have a lot of blank and negative space on the other 2/3 of the screen. Sometimes you have Michael Myers, you know, looking out of the bushes, and that scares people. But it's that anticipation of things happening that make people really fucking anxious and scared during horror movies.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of John Carpenter. I've seen a ton of his films, the good, the bad, all in between. I love his style.
The ugly.
Yeah, yeah. I think he had like mastered the art of unsettling and thriller type films. Like you just mentioned, Halloween puts you in a constant state of anxiety, and then The Thing, plays on that to a point where you don't even know who to trust throughout this film. Going into it and going into, we talk a lot in some of our films about the characters and the development of these characters. How did you guys feel about his unique style of almost no introduction, where you're just plugged right into the movie? A problem starts immediately and you're introduced to a whole cast and crew, no backstories whatsoever. Eric, I'll hand it off to you.
I enjoyed it. I feel like that it put us all on a similar level with every single character. Like, McCready wasn't the exact protagonist right away. We were kind of just dropped into this world where a Norwegian was just hunting this wolf, or a husky, I guess, and we have no clue why. And then we get dropped into this camp in Antarctica of, like, American scientists, I guess, like, quote-unquote scientists that, some of them are playing chess or, pouring, like, booze on their fucking computer. But either way, we don't have a clear protagonist right away. We are kind of, like, turned towards McCready, but we don't really root for anybody until 20 to 30 minutes into the film. And I think that's a cool way to do it. Like, I enjoy that we don't have a clear protagonist right away. We are kind of all pitted against each other as if we would be if we were in a desolate place in Antarctica.
Exactly. As if there was a monster who was trying to kill all of us and we didn't trust anyone. And I agree with Eric completely that the way that they introduced the characters and the way they made the backstories vague, but it didn't matter because it was their actions that was the most important part on the screen, was brilliant. I thought that was a really well done job of kind of slow playing the whole story while still developing it. Because, I mean, how many people were on that thing? Like 10? I feel like we had 10. Maybe is that a little
about 10.
But it's between 8 and 10 characters that you kind of have to literally. They all have personalities. They all have things that are defining about them. They all have characteristics, and you all get, like Cole said, you get dropped in on it immediately, and you kind of have to suss out for yourself or pick out how you're going to trust these characters throughout the whole thing. Like, you're asking the question, who do I trust, just as much as the characters are asking themselves, who do I trust? And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree. I'm going to try and, not persuade you guys because everyone knows how much I love this movie. But there was actually a cut of this film that was released in a special edition that includes a bunch of backstories for every single character. And John Carpenter came out and said that is absolutely the worst cut of the film. He did not support it because, like you guys alluded to, the point of this film is to not know who to trust. And why would you give a bunch of characters backstory to the audience when you could just throw them into a mess and have them feel the same terror of unknowing as everyone else? And I thought he did a phenomenal job, and then some guy thought he could do a better job cutting it, and he released it and pissed off the director. So glad you guys agree with me on that point.
And that's fair. I never trust McCready throughout the whole thing. I really don't. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the whole entire time you're just questioning everyone's intentions and what are they going to do? And that's another thing that it's not necessarily a remake, but it's kind of a prequel, the 2011 version of The Thing. They give backstory to some of the main characters, and I think that hindered it and why it was not as impactful as this one. So moving into another aspect of this film that I thought they did, I personally think they did a great job, is the music, the choices of music, and what the overall score was. Kevin, let's give it to you. Talk to me about music, man. I'm a big dummy. I know nothing about music, but I liked the sounds.
See, that is all you really need to say about a soundtrack, right? If you don't know anything about music, but you can appreciate the way that it's put together from a soundtrack aspect, they did a pretty good job. Any horror film's going to have these highs and these lows, or even a thriller of some sort where the soundtrack absolutely is necessary for, the heightened awareness of the film. But we get a lot of great tracks from our boombox in the kitchen, right? I think that the ambient noise in this film is brilliant. That they do a great job of, accentuating helicopter noises, right? Gunshots, like whatever it have, the noise of the monster itself, that is such a highlight that you have to bring it into the conversation about soundtrack, even though it probably isn't what you would regularly discuss when discussing that. So overall, I mean, it just lended to the suspense and the horror and the drama of the film, and I really liked it.
All right, so fun fact about the music, the scene with the boombox where he's playing Supernatural. Superstition. Dang it. Okay, so we're gonna
Superstition by Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder. All right,
Motown, baby.
All right, so that song actually was in the original theatric release, but Universal never got the rights to the song, and so when they released it to home on like VHS and stuff, they actually had to replace it with another song by like a completely different band and everything like that. And then eventually they got the rights, so now it's back in the original film. But that was like just a fun tidbit of kind of how back in the 80s they just didn't give a shit about copyright. They're like, fucking put it in the movie, we might get the rights. If not, we'll swap it out later, but we'll try and make some money. So, but Eric, tell me about your interpretation of the music.
Ennio Morricone, he did a lot of really good film soundtracks. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, In the Line of Fire, Bugsy, Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, Mission to Mars, and The Untouchables by Brian De Palma there. And he's a really fucking good film composer. The fact he did this one like adds to the ilk of this film.
I did not know any of that, and that's brilliant. I mean, that alone just sets this movie even higher above than it ever could have been, right? I mean, it's just brilliant.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly has probably one of my favorite film soundtracks
right?
of all time.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so good.
So moving on to kind of the introduction. Let's talk about the introduction of the alien and its presence kind of being known. So I have talked a lot about I do enjoy CGI to a certain extent, but I feel like it's kind of taken away some of the impact that film has with practical effects. So I kind of want to talk. Let's go to Eric this time. What was your thoughts on the initial impact of the alien and the creature, and maybe just touch on some of the just general effects that were performed in this film?
Well, if I believe the practical effects, the 80s was a big time for practical effects. People turning into monsters in this film was a big part of this film. It was campy. It was definitely campy. And I actually kind of love how campy it was. Nowadays, you don't really get that kind of campiness. We have CGI nowadays, but we don't have as much practical effects to show like how kind of cool certain like transformations can be from human to monster. The fact that this film kind of did the 80s thing of like fully embracing the camp of it makes it a little bit more appealing and charming.
What about your Kevin?
Man, what to even say about the design and the creature effects in this film? Holy cow. The practical effects and the use that they decided to go all in the sense that they made this monster truly an adaptable being that would change the way it looked throughout the film was a big plus to this film, and huge props, I suppose, and respect, because they could have easily said, or John Carpenter could have said, this is my one monster, right? This is the thing that we're going to repeat in X amount of scenes throughout the film. But instead, he came up with something that was much more expensive, much more hard to manage, something that he had to have a team of 30-plus designers on to even work on, which was this idea of an amalgamation of a creature that changed throughout the film and showed so many different sides. And the fact that you were going to then turn that all into a practical model is just mind-blowing. It's not something that I think you would see in a lot of modern film, and it's definitely something that sets this apart. The dog aspect of this film is certainly interesting too, right? Because the first time that we see the monster or the thing is in that kennel, And we kind of see that throughout the entirety of the film, as even towards the end of it, where you get dog aspects of the beast as it's, dying or changing and all of that. And that's really important too. And I think that the detail that they had to put in with using of animals and kind of how you have to get past the idea of this as being too gross, right? Because they really had to be like, well, this is a film for certain people, and we're just going to go all fucking in. We're doing all the blood, all the gore, all the crazy, all the everything, and we're just going for it. And on the other side, then you wouldn't have done any of the effects. So I think they realized that once they were at a certain point, it was just time to go all in. And I think they did a great job. I mean, there's so many iconic scenes from the arms getting eaten alive by the corpse, between that and just like all of the gigantic looking things just throughout the whole movie. Just brilliant. Well done.
Now, Cole, did HBO like completely re-edit a lot of the like practical effects in 2011? It kind of seems like they might have done that. Universal Studios ordered the film to be re-edited and released with CGI effects. But like, I don't know if HBO Max took back the original version.
Yeah, so they're talking about the 2011 version was shot with all practical effects, and then they went back and they overlaid CGI over the whole entire thing, which is part of the reason why I kind of hate that film, because I love the Thing universe and I was super pumped for this new film. And when the Thing came out in 1982, a lot of people, it did not do very well, and a lot of people thought it was like too gory, it was campy, it was labeled as like a B-rated horror film and all this stuff made by Universal.
Fucking Ronald Reagan,
yeah,
man.
And
Fucking Ronald Reagan.
and the lead guy for all the practical effects was Rob Bottin, and he was 22 years old, and he worked his ass off for this film to the point where he actually had to take time away from it and was like on medical leave due to exhaustion because he's put so much of like blood, sweat, and tear into this thing.
Double pneumonia and bleeding ulcers,
Yeah, and then they go and they make a spiritual successor, and they're like, you know what we're not going to do practical effects. Actually, we're going to do practical effects, but we're going to paint over it with a bunch of bullshit, and I don't know, it left a bad taste in my mouth. And like the film, the 2011 version is not bad, but it doesn't hold up, and it doesn't do, what it's the series justice, so to speak. So, yeah. I like how, Eric, you brought up the kind of the campiness and stuff, and I sort of touched on it. This film, when they were trying to staff it for actors, so this was John Carpenter's technically his first big movie. It was like with a studio, Universal. He had never done any films for any large studios before, and this was going to be his first big, break, so to speak. And they had a very hard time getting actors for this film, and especially a big name actor, because everyone labeled this as a B-rated, campy kind of horror film that they didn't want to be attached to. Originally, there was supposed to be Harrison Ford was originally written for, and I think there was about 10 other people that all turned it down until they came to Kurt Russell. So my question to you, Kevin, is: do you feel like this is a B-rated film, and do you think that Kurt Russell was the right man for the job?
All right. Look, I'm biased. I really am biased for a couple different reasons. You're my friend. I love that this movie means a lot to you, and I really enjoyed watching it. And I don't like horror films, so I don't care about A versus B or what even an A-rated horror film might be. I feel like this falls in line with all of the great horror films of the 70s and 80s. It stands up not just from a special effects aspect, from a story aspect, from everything else. I think Kurt Russell does such a brilliant job of being the most important thing that he has to be in this film, which is a drunken hero. He doesn't really have to be a leader. He doesn't really have to be, anybody who comes up with a great idea. He just has to come up with some sort of personality, and that's drinking and pouring his scotch out on a chess machine, and just wanting to sleep in his shack, but having to save the world. I thought he was brilliant. I don't know if Harrison Ford would have done half as good of a job. Maybe he would, maybe he's not. But for me, it was really the right choice. Kurt Russell is the man, and I really enjoyed that film because of his performance.
Same question to you, Eric.
I'm gonna disagree. I think that this film could have been better without Kurt Russell. I think that I think that so there's a lot of campiness to this film, and Kurt Russell definitely plays along with that. But I think that this film could have had more depth of character without Kurt Russell, and I actually think Keith David outacted him at every part of the film. Keith David was a fucking great actor, and there are better. Wilford Brimley, really good. Like I think he was actually a better actor in this film than also Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell, like, okay, if you look at the '80s, he was like the right man for the time, right? But when you watch this back 30 years later, I just feel like
Keith David was perfect to be
40 years later,
his opposite at the end there, right? Like, that was the right choice.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but like I just feel like Kurt Russell did not put down the good depth of character that could have made this film a timeless like classic. And instead I'm looking at this as like, this is an 80s film that has camp to it, has horror from the 80s, and has Kurt Russell, who finds this piece of it.
Kurt Russell is like the meme. Like, do you feel like his the way you perceive him now is different? Like the way it influences the way you perceive his character in this film?
Yeah, and this goes into my more general critique of the film. Like, I did enjoy this film, and I do enjoy this film, but I feel like this film is a bit stuck in the 80s, where it's like one action sequence after another, and it doesn't really like give me a full.
So
like,
here's where I'll agree with you. It feels like the same character from like Escape from New York, or like, you know, those quintessential 80s Kurt Russell movies. So you're right in that sense. Like it's a almost a cartoonish version of.
Cole's not enjoying this, but it's okay.
No, I don't know. I loved it still, Cole. Don't get me wrong by any stretch of the imagination, bud.
I like this film. It's just like, I think it's a bit stuck in the 80s, is all. And I don't think Kurt Russell, if we wanted to make this like a timeless.
Can you agree he's better than Harrison Ford for a choice? Not better, like comparison, like not Ford, but like straight up.
Harrison Ford does just play Harrison Ford most of the time.
I don't know. Indiana Jones
I don't think it would have been
Han Solo
much
were different.
Really? I don't know. Yeah. they seem kind of similar.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, let's have that for a different time.
What I'm gathering is Eric sides
episode.
with the capitalist corporate stooges of Universal, who said that Kurt Russell, who said that Kurt Russell wasn't the right man for the job because he was a pretty boy and wouldn't fit into the narrative of this film.
Not a pretty boy.
I know. That's what Universal said. That's what Universal said, and Kevin and I agree with John Carpenter, who believed that he could do the role. And, you know, for everyone out there who struggles with growing facial hair, I just want you to know Kurt Russell's beard took him well over a year to grow it for this film, so he was committed, and I want to reach out to all of my fellow brethren trying to grow a full beard like him. It takes time, and sometimes that's okay if you can't. Yeah. And also,
and you know he was
I love that both of you guys have touched on him pouring scotch into that computer. A little like personal, almost foreshadowing in his life when he dumps it in and calls the computer a bitch. Turns out the computer is voiced by his current wife, but then later ex-wife. So, you know, maybe there was some tension, and that's why we really got the feeling that he did not like that computer. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I love this movie so much.
You're bringing all sorts of fun factoids to this episode.
Speaking of misogyny, let's talk about how this film is a completely all-male cast. Kind of odd and interesting. There's absolutely no women throughout this whole entire film. There's no mention of women. The closest you get is to Kurt Russell's ex-wife talking through a computer that he calls a bitch and kills. So, my question to you guys is, do you think that the all-male kind of cast enhanced some of the like the isolationist and some of the tension between them, or do you think that maybe, you know, the inclusion of female could have added or subtracted? And I understand that this film was made in the 80s, so there could be some things, but
I'm gonna go first on this one.
Kevin, I'll give it to you.
I didn't even think about it. It's odd that you ask it and then you're like, wait, you're right, there isn't. So I guess that means to me that it lended to the story of the camaraderie, right, of the brotherhood or the idea that everyone is equal in their own brains, right? So if you introduce a female, regardless of the way, the truth of equality and all of that jazz, the film industry has a way of portraying men and women and the battle of the sexes. So the moment you introduce a female character, I feel like that element of distrust is changed a little bit. There's not the equal playing field where you have 10 men across the whole board where everyone could, be each other and who trusts who and all of that jazz. So there isn't any other element to that other than just that. Outside of that, it probably could have added some depth of character. Honestly, it probably could have added a different vein to it. So I won't say that it was the right choice. I think that they probably could have had even more of an interesting take on everything if you would have added a female character. But I can see why John Carpenter decided to go with what he did.
So I kind of look at this in the same way that I look at Oppenheimer in a way. At that time, like, I don't know if there were that many, like, women in Antarctica, or Oppenheimer's case, I don't know how many women were actually, like, at Los Alamos at that time. They were there, but, like, not a main part of the story, which is a sad part of our society, but, like, a true fact. I think that it was true to the time period it was in. And so I think that's fair for the time period it was in, really, the 80s. I don't have any gripe with it.
Yeah, I had a similar kind of take when I first read that it was an all-male cast. I was like, I did not realize it, but I guess you're right in, given the time and the place. I think it lends itself to that, and I think Kevin also made a good point of, everyone's on the same playing field. Not to say that men and women aren't the same, but when given the horror context, especially in the 80s of, women portrayed in horror films, they're typically not portrayed the same as men. So there's a different kind of underlying connotation. Not to say that's right, it's just how it was back then. Let's go into another kind of interesting subject that this film kind of ties into. So in the 80s, when this film was made and then later released, it was actually at the height, or close to the height, of kind of the AIDS scare, where everyone was, terrified. And the writers actually took some of that and applied it to this film with the whole blood scene, where you don't know who has it, you don't know what's happening, you don't know who is the quote-unquote the thing, and the only way to find out, you can't tell, by looking at them, the only way to find out is through a blood test. So I was kind of thought that was a really interesting and kind of a cool nod into it. Eric, did you kind of pick up on that, or did you know about that prior to this film?
I did not know about that, and I should have done a little more research into it. Now that you mention it, it makes a lot of sense. It came out, 1982? So it was very early in the AIDS scare, and we all know that Ronald Reagan didn't even pay attention to it at all through his whole presidency, and George H.W. Bush actually finally acknowledged it. Kind of like thinking about how to think about like how you could just touch a part of somebody's blood and figure out like oh, they have AIDS, or I don't know, like the scare of like how if you're around them, you might get it, the paranoia of it. If John Carpenter was trying to make that large metaphor, then I'd give this film way more props. If John Carpenter was trying to make this large metaphor about how people at that time were disregarding science and just kind of thinking about like, oh, if I'm near somebody, then I'll get it too. That I would give this film a lot of props. I don't think that John Carpenter was trying to do that though. correct me if I'm wrong.
There
but,
is,
yeah.
so the writers have said that they took some inspiration from that, and then in that scene, in the background, there's several posters from World War II talking about kind of like sexually transmitted diseases and stuff like that in the background of that scene, that some interpretation I think was taken in terms of connecting those dots, because he's never come out and specifically said it that I'm aware of, but I'd like to think that maybe he was trying to, maybe kind of push that paranoia into the film and whatnot. So, just my thoughts.
Do you think that the paranoia was effective in getting people to think otherwise, though?
I don't think that I don't think it probably was, because to be honest, I didn't even think about it until I read about it and I looked back and I rewatched it and I saw all those undertones. So I think it was a very subtle way to include it, but it wasn't one that if you went to the theater at the time, you would have come out thinking, kind of changing your mind about the whole situation involving the AIDS epidemic. So I give you that. Which,
I mean, you're in the 80s and like... I mean, if he was trying to make that grand metaphor, I give him props to it, but like, I didn't see it. So, yeah.
Speaking of the 80s, this film came out 2 weeks after E.T. and also the same weekend as Blade Runner, which kind of led to this movie being a failure in terms of the box office gross and stuff. Kevin, my question to you is, one, if you were a kid or maybe the same age as you are now in the 80s, and you're given the choice of E.T., The Thing, or Blade Runner, one, that's an awesome weekend to just binge a bunch of really great movies, but which one would you watch first? And do you think that E.T. coming out 2 weeks earlier and having a similar alien vibe, but a much different spin in terms of like the gore and the horror and stuff like that, do you think that affected it?
Holy Batman. Look, if we're putting E.T. and The Thing even in a remote, close to conversation, the fuck no. Look, Steven Spielberg and E.T. is a family-friendly, like, go out to the film, love life, and feel good. The Thing is a movie that'll scar you for fucking life if you watch it correctly, because it's, like, graphic as shit and just gory as hell. Like, there shouldn't be any fucking comparison. Look, Eric, you're an E.T. stan. You don't get to comment on this whole thing because you love it. All right, no. I only mean there was a previous episode where you really liked E.T. I don't mean that to be in a derogatory stance. Anyway, no, there shouldn't be any comparison between this movie and that at all in any way whatsoever. I know the 2 week. Did it hurt it? Probably. Right? Oh, there's an alien movie out there. Yeah, I don't want to see one alien movie versus the other alien movie. But hey, Eric, goddamn, they ain't even close.
There was definitely a commercial failure involved with The Thing and
yes, Blade Runner.
Like, okay,
I guess.
E.T. obviously did much better than all of them because on surface it had a much rosier picture than both these other films. Like Blade Runner, very bleak and dark. The Thing. So this is going to go into my general critique of the film. I feel like it is like one action sequence after another, and it almost is similar to Die Hard in that way, where there's just like one action sequence after another, and that's like the film. Like, yeah, I don't think there's that much deeper to read into it. Maybe Cole will give me a different answer later. Yeah.
Yeah, Cole, tell us.
Are you telling me this is also a Christmas movie?
Yes!
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be.
I mean,
it's in wintertime, but like, but either way, like, if you were out at that time and you were like going to the theater at that time, obviously you'd see E.T. You wouldn't see these other two films, like if you only wanted to see one film. But if you wanted to see multiple films, yeah, sure, I'd see like E.T. and then I'd probably see Blade Runner after The Thing if I was really ranking films here. Sorry, Cole, but like I do think E.T. and Blade Runner are a little bit better. But yeah.
I know. I knew what I was going to expect out of you. I was interested to hear more of what Kevin had. But no, I think it's I think it's quite interesting that E.T. and this movie came out so close together. And then if you look at the reviews from film critics at the time, all of them just bashed The Thing so hard for being too gory, too violent, too over the top. This isn't what like film is supposed to be about. And I think E.T. is the reason why he got so much hate, because 2 weeks earlier everyone was singing E.T.'s praises. You know, The Thing comes out, and another question I had leading into this is a lot of people, a lot of film critics talked about how this is just an Alien knockoff, because Alien came out in 79, so you're talking 3 years earlier, and they're just talking about how this is just a shittier version of Alien, where it's just over the top gore and kind of bullshit.
I mean,
I disagree with them because
yeah.
I think Alien infected one person and then got out into the world. The Thing was trying to imitate people, like act like they're actually
100%.
real people, and like trick them into thinking that they're real people, and then kill them. And I do think it's different than Alien. I think Alien might have set the path for these kind of films. Like, I do think sci-fi and horror, like Alien, probably set the path for that. But I don't think The Thing was a knockoff of that, though. So...
Yeah, I mean, I think my top 70 movie was Alien, and my top 80s movies was The Thing. And my number 2 for the 80s was Alien. So obviously I am the core demographic that absolutely love these films. But when I saw that this was just a knockoff of Alien, I almost got offended for John Carpenter, because I was like, this is so different. And John Carpenter, there's an interview that I watched with him where he even talked about how he wanted to make a sci-fi alien movie where it wasn't just a monster that you could tell was a costume that a man was walking in, right? And he even specifically called out Alien, which I think is a little bit of a bold take, because the design for Alien, the alien in Alien, is phenomenal by H.G. Geiger. But I did like his take about how he didn't want to make a monster movie where it was just a monster in a costume,
to that
or a person
point,
in a costume, right?
he doesn't make an ending of a monster movie that's like a monster movie. Which is also why,
Exactly.
and I know we'll talk about the ending here in a bit, but I think like when you talk about reception, when you talk about the critics and the people, when you have an ambiguous ending like we have, where you're forced to make a decision on your own about who is the thing or whatever that may end up being, the audiences don't like that. They want you to spoon feed it
Is
to
it
you.
ambiguous, though? Like,
I think it
I
is.
feel like
I think
they
it is.
defeated the alien and they froze in the cold. I think that's what happened. You know,
I disagree.
Like,
Yeah,
the
but
way
the,
they got
but
out.
I think
the
they-
alien. Remember, the alien wanted to be frozen. So once he realized he was caught, he was trying to sabotage to the point where he was going to get frozen and then could be found again to start
Okay.
over.
He knew he wasn't
So
going to
the end-
survive either
so-
way.
Yeah.
Exactly,
So
and
somebody
then
else
and then you
eventually
don't
would
know
unfreeze him.
The same way that he did this term.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, so you don't know if the two final characters.
And I don't think John Carpenter
are-
wanted to answer that question. I think he liked audiences asking him what was the answer. But audiences didn't like
exactly, and he did it ambiguous on purpose, and Universal was very adamant against it, and they did like a whole film screening, and a bunch of people said that they wish they knew what the ending was, and for a long time John Carpenter felt like that he was dead in the water in terms of this film, because Universal was pushing him so hard to make a definitive ending where the monster was killed or the monster wasn't, like they want, but he stood fast, and I think he did the right decision of making it ambiguous in terms of, do you know if one of them is an alien or not? You know they're both gonna die, but is one of them gonna be the alien and be found later when a rescue mission comes and takes the bodies home?
Well,
I don't know.
little do they know, like, global warming is going to kill us all.
right.
So,
Oh
You
yeah,
have to
I mean
use
we're
certain
all
imagination.
yeah, like they're going to be on a planet that's just completely fucked anyway. So,
Oh boy.
yeah. But yeah, so I guess, is there anything that you guys liked or didn't like? Is there any key scenes that you really thought were impactful, or key scenes that took you out of it? I know I'm a big advocate of having rants about things that take me out of movies. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to do your own.
I really loved, I already touched on this, but the wide variety of the practical effects, like having so many different models for this monster was just brilliant to me. Just in every different context, from it taking over the dogs to being on the, autopsy table, to the different phases, to the giant, huge monster at the end. Like, all of it was unique, and I just think they did a really good job of making the thing really, truly a thing. And I think this movie lasts in the annals of time because of that. So I just wanted to retouch on that.
And I agree that it lasts in the annals of time because Kurt Russell is right there, and you have Kurt Russell, you have Ennio Morricone, you have this campiness to the film, the practical effects. You rewatch it and you kind of remember what it must have been like in the 80s and the sci-fi aspect of the 80s. I think it's a good film because of that. Do I think it's a great film? Is the question that I will answer in my review.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. I like the segue to our conclusion of this one-off that I am so happy that Eric provided me the opportunity to interview you guys and kind of have a conversation about one of my favorite, if not the favorite film of all time.
Oh, fuck! My basement's flooding! My basement's flooding! Fuck! Fuck! Fuck!
Hey there, sorry, my basement flooded, so we're having some technical difficulties, and we'll be right back.
If you have type 2 diabetes like I had, you're confronted with choices. You can choose to feel sorry for yourself. I hope you don't. I hope you choose to get involved with a good doctor. Find out some things about diabetes and your own body in the bargain. You'll learn to check your own blood sugar and check it often. That, along with a simple diet and exercise program, can help keep your diabetes under control. If you're on Medicare, call Liberty Medical. We'll help you keep your diabetes under control. First, we'll give you a free meter. No one is more serious than Liberty about helping you keep your diabetes under control. That's why we're a proud sponsor of the American Diabetes Association and their mission to prevent and cure diabetes. Call for your free meter and ADA offer. Call 1-800-816-8052.
I have so many fun facts that I just I feel like I need just a solid 10 minutes of me running through about how amazing this film is.
You probably should just do them all.
This film they filmed this for only 3 months. This whole thing took they did it all in 3 months, which is just mind blowing from the practical effects standpoint, which is why that guy basically killed himself.
Especially for the budget.
Yeah, $15 million, and then also everyone was making their breath look visible because they cooled the whole set down to about 40 degrees, so it wasn't freezing while they were doing it, but they were making people's breath visible by basically having them smoke prior to the scene and exhaling, which is just such an amazing 80s thing to do.
Right, we're not going to make it so cold where your breath is actually
rip some
coming
cigs,
out.
boys.
Yeah, you gotta smoke cigarettes right before filming.
Yeah,
that's fucked.
And one thing I didn't even realize was this was John Carpenter's first big feature presentation with Universal or any of those other big movie industries back then.
Makes sense why he was so paranoid, I guess, about its release and everything else, and the way people perceived it and the all of those things.
From a maybe a cinema viewer, what a great time to go to the movies to see E.T., Blade Runner, and the thing.
Right?
But what a terrible time to release your movie 2 weeks after E.T. and the same day as Blade Runner. You are in such what a hard
spoiled.
Yeah, God, so good. I will say, if you want to watch the 2011 version of the thing, it's set, the whole premise is the Norwegians, right? So it's set with all of the people from the Norwegians leading up to this film, and it's about how they discover the alien and their interaction and all that stuff. But it does, I don't know, there's a lot of things that they do that I think was because they didn't have a strong enough director to say no to Universal, and they like just jammed all the CGI and bullshit and like backstories, and they like overemphasize things, and just I don't know, kind of disappointing to me.
That
But
explosion at the end
I will
is
say
quite
still,
ridiculous if you think about what Kurt Russell
Yeah.
threw at that monster.
Yeah, also Kurt Russell didn't realize the explosion was going to be as big as it was, and he almost got like third-degree burns or something. There was like he almost got like severely injured because he didn't react or like jump far enough, and his reaction
After he
to the
says, "Fuck
explosion
you
is actually
too,"
like a
and throws
real
it at
one.
him.
Yeah.
Fuck you too.
So.
Ah!
All right. Let's go. Leading into our final ratings of our non-A24, but one of my favorite films of all time. I'm going to go first because everyone knows probably what I'm going to give it, but this film is near and dear to my heart. I absolutely love it. I'm a big James, God, I just forgot his name. I've drank too much whiskey. What is happening? John Carpenter.
John Carpenter.
Good God, I'm a terrible person. I love John
We're
Carpenter.
drinking
I've seen
podcast. Come on.
I know. I've seen like all of his films. I absolutely love them. There's actually a trilogy. He calls it. He calls it his. I can't remember what it is, but he basically calls it his horror trilogy, where it's this movie. He made a movie called I think Into the Mouth. It's kind of like a Cthulhu-esque like horror novel movie. It's kind of weird. And then there's a vampire movie that he made that in the 90s that's escaping my brain as well. But he made a bunch of those trilogies and a bunch of other really great movies. Absolutely love the guy. But this is still my favorite film. Just the overall atmosphere, isolation, all of the characters. I love the fact that you just get thrown right into the mix. You have no idea what's happening. Similar to the, how those characters probably feel in the story, right? Like they don't know what the fuck's going on, and neither do you, and that's why this film just emphasizes and excels at it. And then you add the amazing practical effects and overall just like craziness. And like Kevin alluded to, most horror movies or most creature features that I love, it's just one creature, right? It's one version that they make, and they use it throughout the film. This one, you have no idea what's coming next corner. It's a dog, it's a person. You don't know what person it's going to be. You don't know who's going to open the door and stick his hand and melt it into your face and absorb you. You don't know if a guy's going to go into cardiac arrest and you're going to try and hit him with some paddles to save his life, and then his fucking chest open up and turns into a giant mouth and cuts your arms off. I mean, this... You don't know what's going to happen, and I love it so much. If I could give it like an A++ 24, I would. This movie gets extra credit. It's over the top. It's better than a 4 point. This person's my valedictorian. I absolutely love this movie. I think I'm going to put Eric next, so that way we can sandwich the good with the bad.
So I'm not too down on this film. Like I agree. Like I love the campiness and the practical effects of this film. I generally, like as a film reviewer, enjoy practical effects way more than CGI. So I definitely give it props for that. My big thing is that like John Carpenter, he's a good director, but like I saw such better directing like during Halloween, like where he used like this anxiousness with his camera to build a larger picture of a film. And Kurt Russell, not my favorite actor. Like I like him. He's a good guy. He's a good guy for your action films. And this is what this kind of felt to me, like it felt like a action film, like where you had one death after another, one action part after another, and there was no building of character. Does that like lean into the film like being kind of a film where it drops you into a set, like a time and place where you should have no like emotional attachment to anybody, and everybody should just be like questionable as in terms of like turning into the alien, and that kind of like turns me back to my kind of big critique of film is like if you don't make me feel like any certain way about somebody, then I'm not going to feel extra special about a film. I think I'm going to give this film a B plus 24. Like, I see where it is in the history of film, the practical effects, John Carpenter, his directing, Kurt Russell being Kurt Russell, I see it. I think it's a good film to go back and rewatch when you're, like watching films at Halloween. But I don't think that it's one of these, like, quintessential classics that everybody needs to watch. So, B plus is for me.
All right, Kevin.
That's me. All right. Where to begin with this movie review? So, Cole, I'm not going to lie. You put this movie on a pedestal long before I ever watched it. It's not your fault. It's deserving to be on a pedestal. But when I got to it, I had this kind of legendary idea of maybe what this movie might have been about. Because out of all the annals of movie history, Cole has determined this is his favorite. Now, that means something. So when I went into this film, I kind of gave it that respect, and I was super pleasantly surprised by what I saw on the other side. I think the major strength of this film and what truly, for me, makes it unique is these practical effects that we've alluded to on multiple occasions. The use of portraying your big horror, your big bad, your big evil in a way that makes the audience truly revile, pull back from the screen, feel engrossed, feel just terrified by, is something special. There was so many points in this film where you had to force yourself to watch the screen because there was blood and gore and spewing things and all of this just traumatization that you probably were not expecting when you went into the film. But it hits you so hot and heavy right away in the beginning that you kind of have to assimilate yourself and kind of get used to it right away because it's going to continue to be throughout all of it. And on the second watching, I enjoyed it even much, much more than I enjoyed it on the first time because I really was just like, yeah, that's why this is here. This is why this is included in the film. This is the point that we get the question of who is who and whether or not they're going to survive. And I can't wait to watch it for a third time, for a fourth time. And that, for me, is what makes a great film truly great, is that rewatchability, that ability to kind of have a great experience every time you watch it. And that's certainly true for me on The Thing. I alluded to it earlier that Kurt Russell I thought was the right choice for this film because of his star power, because of his ability to kind of have that in between, not really passive aggressive, but just kind of that just I'm here to get shit done and I'm not here for your personal bullshit. And his kind of detachedness from the rest of the crew kind of came through pretty strong for me. I really thought that John Carpenter did a great job of leaving the question for the audience, and I think that's the hallmark of a great director, is not answering every question for the person who's watching it. The ending, being ambiguous, is also a big plus for me, because it made me question the whole film. And if you question the whole film, that kind of makes you think about everything that you saw before it, which is really important. So I think all in all, I'm really glad that Cole brought this into my life, I gotta say. And I'm gonna give it an A24 for sure. So
Hell yeah. Greatest movie of all time. I really do appreciate everyone joining us, listening to us. Eric, Kevin, I'm so thankful that you guys watched it and are willing to talk to me about it, because Amanda is getting super annoyed with me because I talk about this movie way too much. So I'm glad I have an outlet. I really do appreciate everyone, and I hope we bring a little bit of joy and a little bit of information about cool ass movies that we all love. Please click and subscribe, rate us, give us 5 stars, do whatever you want to do. I love you all, and I hope everyone has a good night.
Checkmate.
Shooting bitch.
A24